Well, hey there, this is Brady, and what you're about to watch is actually, kind of sadly, the final episode of the Ask Brady show. And now, before you get too worked up, the reason for this is because we found that with Pro-Church Daily, we're answering so many of the questions that we would normally answer on the Ask Brady show. We feel like the two shows have kind of become redundant, too much of the same good thing that is possible. So we're going to take this as the final episode of the Ask Brady show. We're going to have 2 weeks of nothing on Sundays, but then we're coming back on Sunday with a brand new type of content. I don't want to give it away too much, but it's going to be bigger and better than ever before. So enjoy the final episode of the Ask Brady show. If you want your questions answered, still send them in, and we'll answer them for episodes of Pro-Church Daily. You'll actually get a better, more expanded answer that way, and look forward to what's to come on Sundays in 2 weeks. Enjoy this episode. Well, hey there, and welcome to the Ask Brady Show, episode number 62. We've got 4 great questions from the people of Pro-Church Nation, and I'm joined as always to my left, your right, it's Roxanne.
It's true.
True, it is. Behind the camera, the editing wizard himself, Jonex. And the man with the cam, Alex Mills.
Thanks. It's not really as special as it sounds because I work here, but I'm here.
Roxanne, take us away with the first question.
All right, the first question comes from John, and he sent in a video.
So as a millennial, I pride myself on, being able to navigate social media, websites, platforms, all of those things like that. But one thing I'm not the greatest at trying to understand is Gen Z and social media. That's one thing that I am really struggling with right now. What kind of content would I create for that? If we have a youth group page, what kind of stuff am I posting, that they would actually want to see, stuff that they would want to interact with? There's so much we don't know about this generation because it's the newest one upcoming, but they're the ones in high school. They're the ones that youth pastors are dealing with. What can we say? What can we do? What can we post to kind of engage them with that stuff? Majority of the time, the posts that I put out are liked by parents and grandparents, and it's like other people following the page, but it's not really reaching the people that it's really meant for. So what should I do to interact with them through social media, or should I just kind of forego the idea and I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Congrats on the launch of Nucleus and Story Tape. You guys are awesome. Proud of you guys. Really cool to watch you. Can't wait to see you go. Answer my question though, for real. Have a good one.
Well, thanks for the question, John. I think it's timely that we begin discussing Gen Z. Gen Z refers generally to anyone that's 22 or younger. You like that? Okay. 22 or younger. And I looked into some data onto the platforms that Gen Z is populating the most right now. And this is some really interesting stuff. Adweek reported that 95% of Gen Z uses YouTube, which is insanely high. Mm-hmm. It gets better. 50% say they cannot live without it.
Wow.
Which makes sense because every single person that's younger right now, their dream occupation is to be a YouTuber.
That's true. And
that's because YouTube is such a huge part of their lives. Of course, there are other platforms. Snapchat is used every single day by 78% of Gen Z, and SGC found that at least half of Gen Z frequents Snapchat. Here's a great question. I want you to guess this, Roxanne.
Oh, no.
Because I want this to stick into the minds and ears of Pro-Church Nation, and so I think making a little segment of it right now will help. So the study found at least half of Gen Z opens Snapchat at least how many times a day?
Ooh, that's a great question.
More than half of Gen Z.
How many times a day they open it?
Yeah, more than half opens it at least this many times a day.
Okay, I would say 75.
75 times a day?
Yeah, because if you're checking your notifications, and the way that youth use Snapchat is to send personal messages back and forth. So
75. Wow, okay, so you're not close, but maybe my shock at the number of times a day and Alex's was not nearly high enough, because at least half of Gen Z frequents Snapchat at least 11 times a day.
Oh, that's not that many.
71%. Okay, 11 times a day. More than half of a generation opens a single app more than 11 times a day. That's not that many.
Okay, but I check Instagram like literally once an hour at least.
Yes, you, one person. But we're talking about more than half of an entire generation.
That's true. And also that would include people, I'm assuming, outside of America and like Canada. So.
Totally. And the key here is that at the end of the day, it can feel intimidating when a new generation or a new platform comes around, right? And when it comes to a new generation, right now, millennials are the hot topic, but we're just beginning to kind of shift our focus to Gen Z. And as a millennial, there are certain elements of Gen Z that I just simply don't understand. I had my cousins who are part of Gen Z kind of create a Spotify playlist for me with all of the trap music that they like.
All right.
They called it like Depression and Other-ish or something. And I remember listening to it, and they're just the saddest, like Lil Xan, or who's the guy that goes Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang.
I don't know, but I know who you're talking about.
Oh, Lil Pump.
Lil Pump.
So I'm listening to this music, and I'm like, this is interesting and quite odd, and it's very bizarre and very sad, and that's maybe one of the hallmarks of Gen Z right now. Every time a new generation comes up, things shift. But the fundamental principles of attention and communication remain the same. And that's what I really want to hit on here, John. There are always going to be like certain elements of communication that are a little bit different. We'd like to say it's a timeless message being shared through timely mediums. So Snapchat is huge with Gen Z, not really that prevalent with the rest of the world. And so that's one example of a distinction, of a small difference. You know, Gen Z does a lot of their messaging very privately. Yeah. And that's probably why you're not getting as many like likes and reactions, because a lot of Gen Z are lurkers because they're not here to publicly do stuff. They're all about the private DMs. Yeah. And so your social strategy for that age group may need to trend a little bit more in that direction. But at the end of the day, there are two things that you need to know, fundamental principles of communication. First is that attention is the most valuable commodity your church can possess. So when it comes to the platforms that you should be on for Gen Z, YouTube, number one. What's also great about YouTube is that it is a public platform, so you can create content that everyone's engaging with. Number two, Snapchat. Number three, Instagram, in that ascending order of importance. And then the second is that storytelling always wins. Storytelling is the most powerful form of human communication. Doesn't matter if you are a boomer, a Gen Z, we interact and engage with stories. Heck, Snapchat was the platform that created the advent of stories that was so famously copied and ripped off by Instagram and then Facebook.
Don't get me started.
Look, it's time for you to move on. The point here is that you can always focus on storytelling. You can always focus on attention. Those are the two fundamental principles of communication that work for a 99-year-old or a 9-year-old. You need to have their attention first, and you need to be on platforms that they're using, and you need to make sure that you're creating content that is in a way that they communicate. And this is where we talk about the uniqueness of each platform's, timeless message in a timely medium. Direct messaging would be where you want to skew more, but there are a ton of things that you can consider with Gen Z. Yeah, they might not like your posts as much, but how much are you investing in stories? Because that's a huge part of interaction with the younger crowd. That's where Snapchat, became famous and made its mark on the social media landscape. So can you do more stories rather than posts, because maybe people aren't liking posts as much? And I'm going to pass this over to Roxanne because she has three siblings that you would categorize as in Gen Z. I have a couple of cousins that I like to talk to. I'll be seeing them for Easter this upcoming weekend. We're having Easter a bit later for the family gathering. Roxanne, what can you talk about when it comes to your three sisters, two sisters, one brother, and their use of social media as Gen Z folk?
Yeah, I think you're completely right. Like, they use social media completely different to our generation, where we're very much like, let's post something and get as many likes as humanly possible, and let's post regularly. Whereas what I've seen with Gen Z is that they're very particular about what they post. They don't post often, and when they do, they'll tag every single person they know because they want to get all the likes. So private messages, like my siblings, we never text each other, but they'll private message me on all social media always. So it'll be interesting to see going forward, how that develops. I think the key always with each generation and each platform is just observing how it's being used by the generation you're trying to reach, right? Yeah. Because we just operate differently. We grew up in a different generation, and so we need to learn how they're using it and then adapt to the way that they're using those social media platforms.
Frankly, I have not spent too much time observing or at least actively observing what Gen Z is posting on social, because I'm not trying to reach them. Pro Church Tools, we help serve church leaders. So just aren't any church leaders that are in Gen Z running their own churches, let's say, yet. Or very, very few and far between. And so I think what Roxanne's hitting on is that you really need to be a student of the people that you're trying to reach when you don't understand the nuances. So when Snapchat came out, I recognized so much of attention was shifting there. So I did everything that I could to learn Snapchat. And it wasn't intuitive. Suddenly we were swiping left and right, and the news feed was gone. And that has now affected so much of our behavior. We took that and adapted it to Nucleus when it comes to swiping left and right. But when it first came out, it was a little bit lacking intuition because it was different. But you sit down and you learn it. Similarly, look at what your students are posting, figure out, reverse engineer why they're posting that, and then use those principles and takeaways into your own content schedule. A couple things to consider when it comes to, again, more philosophical ideas with social is this idea of one-to-one and then one-to-many. Our generation and the one before us uses social media, and the older you are, almost the more likely you are to do this, in a one-to-many approach. So I post on my Facebook profile. I post on my Instagram feed. I send out a tweet. That post is gone from me, to then all of my followers who see it, one to many. Whereas Gen Z, they operate in the one-to-one approach. I DM Roxanne. Roxanne DMs her sister. Her sister DMs her other sister. And we're all DMing each other. And this is really cool because it's a more human way of using social. It's a shift. I also would push back a little bit on this idea that Gen Z only does one-to-one, because what I said earlier, YouTube is the platform where they spend their most time. So they are not just giving up on one-to-one, they're just doing it elsewhere. And they're not giving up on posting frequently, they're just doing it elsewhere. Look at how much we watch daily vloggers. Look at how much Gen Z posts on YouTube. At the very least, they're consuming content on there like crazy. So you as a church could create a YouTube channel, use the principles of storytelling, and help accomplish your student ministry's vision and mission statement, helping students to love God, love people, and make disciples through a YouTube channel that posts maybe once or twice, 3 times every single day. Who knows? What's great is that you don't even need a crazy setup to do it. You could get a $1,000 camera setup if you want and go pro, but you could also just use your mobile device if you wanted, and Gen Z is okay with that because they grew up on Snapchat where we were all just used to looking at people with vertical video on their mobile devices. Yeah, it wasn't super high quality. That's what they are natively attuned to. So, one-to-one, one-to-many, leverage YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, more DMs, more private messaging, and again, attention, most valuable commodity, storytelling always wins.
I was actually just thinking the other day about the shift from one-to-many to one-to-one because it was your birthday. And so I looked at our friendship history on Facebook, and way back, 11 years ago, it was common to just post on people's wall and be like, hey, what's going on? Tell me about your life, whatever, in public. And now we would never do that because it's so taboo to post private things in public like that. But back in the day, it was the thing to do. And
Facts.
I was just so embarrassed. And I was like, I'm never doing that again. All right. Question 2 comes from Steven, and he said, just recently listened to a few Pro Church Daily episodes and Ask Brady shows about your Instagram strategy. When it comes to A/B testing hashtags on Instagram, should I make a new Instagram post with the second set of hashtags, or should I delete set A and replace with set B in the same comment? Also, if I'm running a new campaign or have found a new set of hashtags that work, should I go back and update the hashtags in the hidden comment on old posts and still expect to get value out of old posts being discovered?
Well, thank you for the question, Stephen. When it comes to A/B testing your hashtags, I would always do that on unique, separate posts. That's not a perfect way to isolate the variable because the content of your post could perform better or worse, but hashtags, if they're working the way that they should work, they're being discovered through search. And so that's the way that you'll know if they're working or not. And then when it comes to your second question, when you find winners, do you go back and add them to your past posts and photos? It's an interesting question. I don't do that. I feel like it might be helpful, but it's probably overkill. And with the advent of Instagram enabling you to add hashtags to your actual profile, that might be a way to kind of, in the interim, kind of like an in-between solution to that. But at the end of the day, you really have to know about your analytics and data when it comes to something like this. So you've really got to mine the data that Instagram is providing you through that free Instagram business profile and look and see how many people are discovering me through my hashtags. When we looked and found this, we found that most recently for us, the number of people discovering us through hashtags wasn't a super high amount. And this might be due to Instagram algorithm changes. And so we stopped prioritizing them a little bit because maybe 5 or 6 people were finding us through it, but if it wasn't that much, it wasn't going to be like maybe worth all of our time. And so I want to actually give you some real data on this. So I've gone back, this is about 10 weeks ago to a post. It's got 160 likes, and if I look at the insights, and it has all the hashtags added, it looks like it got 30 impressions from hashtags, 4,000 from the actual news feed. So that's about 100 times difference between hashtags and the profile, the news feed. So 30 people finding it through hashtags. So that means 30 through search. That's not nothing. And if those people then in turn became followers, I mean, that's huge. Even if half of them did, if 1/3 of them did, 10 new followers is definitely worth the hashtags that we added. And so I don't want to discount them, but they're not a crazy huge part of the strategy. And I think what you're alluding to here with your question is probably a certain level of minutia that's unnecessary. It's probably a bit much. You'd probably want to focus, because we only have so much creative and mental energy. And the thing with Instagram hashtags is once you've set them, hopefully you can forget it and maybe revisit every 3 to 6 months. But don't overthink it or go overkill with it, because you probably can dedicate that mental and creative energy elsewhere and find it actually more valuable when it comes to your ROI. The great thing about hashtags, though, is that comparing the people finding that post through hashtags to the people that saw it in the feed is not actually a good comparison now that I think of it, because if you use hashtags, 30 people could find your post. If you only have 100 followers on Instagram, that's huge. You might only have 30 people that saw the post due to the Instagram algorithm, so that's like 1-to-1. The bigger that your profile is, the less important hashtags seem to become, because you get momentum and traction in other areas. And so me comparing, well, it only got 30 to 4,000, that's more than 100 times more through the newsfeed. So, well, yeah, but you have 10,000 plus followers. If someone only has 100, a fraction of that, those 30 could be a big deal. And so I'm kind of shifting my answer as I answer it, saying I kind of downplayed hashtags. Now I'm not downplaying them, but I do stand by the thought of not, committing any overkill when it comes to determining the A/B testing. You do want to figure out hashtags that work. Otherwise, it's not worth putting them in there. And the best way to do that is to put them by themselves in their own individual posts. Give them their chance from scratch to perform good or bad. I don't think it's probably worth it to go back and adjust, though it's interesting. So if you want to, go for it. Thus, my answer is a lot of ambiguity. Your call.
Hopefully that clears it up for you.
I think one thing you can take away from this answer is that a lot of this social media stuff is experimental.
It really is, yeah.
When we share something with you, it's because we've found a strategy that is proven to work, and we share it with you because we think it's worth your time. We know how limited your time, money, and creative energy is when you work at a church. And so we only want to offer you strategies, tips, and tactics that we know are going to work if you put them into practice and do the actual work and put the effort in. When it comes to something like this, I mean, it could work, it might not. It's not something that I consider doing because the difference, you're only going to move the needle a tiny, tiny bit, so it's probably not worth the time, the stress, or the concern. But it also could actually move the needle a bit, and so I don't want to discount it and say it's not worth it, because depending on the size of your profile, it could make somewhat meaningful gains for you. But again, at the end of the day, so much of social is experimenting. That's why you need the data. Test, see what's working, what's not working. You'll make mistakes. You need to make mistakes. We try so many things that don't work, and then we don't share them with you because we don't want you to make the same mistakes. And so Steven's kind of leading the way with that, and it's very cool.
Yep. All right. Question 3 comes from Michael, and he says, "Hey, Brady, I realized that using Safari, you can pin a website on your home screen and name it. I saw that Nucleus.Church was pinned with an app-like logo. I was wondering if you could explain how to make your website capable of doing this. I am learning web development, and as far as I can see, this feature completely eliminates the need for apps at all because the button on the home screen is what makes an app better than a website."
Well, thanks for the question, Michael. You are able, using Safari on an Apple device and with Android devices as well, to take a web page, any web page, and save it to the home screen of your mobile device. We have a walkthrough within the Nucleus documentation that's public. We're going to link it in the show notes that you can access when it comes to actually doing this. Obviously, adding it to your home screen is pretty simple. You click the, what's that button called? What did I call it on this walkthrough? The share button on the browser toolbar, which will then open up a series of options in your Apple device, and then you can add to home screen. That will save it. The question that Michael's getting at is, how do you customize that actual icon that shows up? And the way that you do that is you change the favicon, the fave icon of your website. So this is the icon that shows up in a browser. If you have a bunch of tabs open and you'll see a little icon, that's your fave icon showing up in the browser. It also is used to populate the icon of your app-like home screen page save. And so you want to make sure you edit that. We have an option within Nucleus where you can upload a fave icon directly. It is different than your logo. It's what browsers use. It's what your save to home screen button will use. Very simple. You just want to have like a PNG. They're very small, probably about 250 by 250 is as big as you want to go. There's so many different sizes. The great thing about modern web is that they all can be resized pretty dynamically now. It used to be that you had to upload like 1,500 different fave icons.
Perfect.
From like 228 by 228 all the way down to like 8 by 8, like the tiniest possible one you could ever use. Now that's all done dynamically by most church website builders, including your Nucleus. And so that's the fave icon. That's what you need to edit if you want your icon to change when you save your website to your mobile device home screen.
Perfect. All right. Last question comes from Michaela, and she says, "Hey, Brady, Roxanne, and team. I run 2 social accounts, one on Facebook and one on Insta, for a summer internship program my denomination offers for college students. The original intention was these accounts was to reach and engage with prospective and current students, but I found..." Break. You distracted me. Okay. "But I've found that the majority of our likes/follows are from a third group, alumni of the program. I think that most of the alumni like the page because they loved the program and would stick around even if we didn't direct content at them. But because they are a big part of our following and often engage with posts, I do end up creating a good amount of posts with them in mind. My question is, how would you suggest I approach this? Should I try to make every post something for all 3 of these groups? Should I just focus on one group, or should I try to have some posts directed at each group? And if this is the case, do you have a ratio you'd suggest for this? Thanks for your time." Michaela.
Thanks for the question, Michaela. It sounds like the group that you're trying to reach, while may not be as responsive as, let's say, the alumni, which on the surface level makes a lot of sense, that's still the group that you're trying to reach, though. So you still should prioritize them. You said it yourself in the question. Whatever you post, the alumni are still going to like it because it's going to remind them of fond memories of good times as they scroll through their feed. And whether you're posting something that's quote-unquote targeted at them, or you're posting a photo of a smiling intern that reminds them of themselves, a younger them from back in the day, that's going to resonate with them either way.
Yeah.
So I think that the distinction between posting for multiple different demographics is less important than honing in on the one that you want to reach the most. Again, you said it yourself. The alumni are going to be engaged just as much either way. So don't worry about that. Focus on the ones that you are trying to reach most, because that's the whole goal of the platform. The goal isn't to get likes or engagement, unless you're getting likes and engagement from the people you want to reach. If my mom created 200 burner accounts, which who knows, she may have, and she liked every single one of my Insta posts, and I was like, nice, 200 likes on every account or on every page, it wouldn't really matter because they were all burner accounts from my mom. Or for a more accurate thing. Let's say I posted, something about me going to the gym. And, 1,000 fitness professionals found the hashtag or got connected to the post and liked it. Yeah, it would look cool that I would have a bunch of likes, let's say more than average.
Right.
But what does that help me? Does it help me at all? No, because those fitness professionals are very unlikely to find any value in the content we create, and even more unlikely to ever sign up for Nucleus or StoryTape or any of the products that we create. And so you got to prioritize your target audience more than anything, even if they're not as responsive. I think you've actually got a good thing going for you in that you've got this other group that's giving you a bunch of likes, and they're helping boost the post, almost like this group that's just there to be cheerleaders. And who knows, that could influence the Instagram algorithm to show your posts to more people. That makes it more likely for your target audience to see it, because you've kind of got this bonus boosting group in the background that's giving you a ton of love regardless of what you post, which is great either way. So I'd take that. Double down on the target audience, even if they're not as responsive, because at the end of the day, if you're not reaching your target audience, those metrics are just vanity metrics and not worth it at all.
It's very much like, it reminds me a lot of myself and my college. Like, my college has social media accounts, and obviously, I'm not their target audience anymore. I already went. I already paid my money. They aren't going to make any more money off of me. It's done. But I still follow them because I want to support them. I know the people that run the channels. I love them. I obviously think the school is great. So I'm going to like their posts just because I want to support them. But like you said, I'm just not their target audience anymore. So I think you're correct in that the posts that you make need to be for the people that your end goal. What is your end goal? I mean, you want people to join your internship program. So then your end goal should be people that could join your internship program.
It's really part of the dynamic of this particular industry is the wrong term, but the particular life cycle of this platform, whether it be school, an internship. It's like you have people come in, they're transient, and eventually they move on. Mm-hmm. The people that move on are part of this small group that actually came in the first place. And they're always going to have fond memories. And so they're always going to be more likely to engage, more likely to like. And it is this interesting dynamic because you can play to that group. But again, like you said, Michaela, they're probably going to do it either way. Mm-hmm. So you don't really need to cater to them because they're easy likes.
Truth.
At the same point, they're not your target audience. And it feels weird, right? It's like if you gave all your attention to the boy that didn't like you or the girl that didn't like you. Yeah. And then you're like, no, but the other one's taken. So there's really no point of giving them attention, even if they are responsive, right? Weak analogy, not the best. We went with it. We discovered something along the way. Hopefully that makes sense, Michaela. And that'll do it for this episode of the Ask Brady Show. If you want your question answered, even if I might not answer it at all, send an email to hello@prochurchtools.com. If you send in a video like John did, you'll be sent immediately to the top of the queue and get your question answered first. You can also send in a written question to hello@prochurchtools.com, #AskBrady on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook. Thanks for watching. Go seize the 167, Pro Church Nation. We'll talk real soon.